Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience, and I'm here tonight with my full review of the Burson Audio Conductor 3 reference amp. This was loaned to me by Burson Audio for review, and I wanted to say thank you to Burson for giving me the chance to listen to and review this amp, and thank you for their patience, because this review should have probably been out a month ago, and I've been running a little bit behind, so I apologize for that. Burson Audio is out of Australia, and this amp, I'll try to give you a quick look at it. It's kind of big and a little bit heavy, so I'm not going to sit here and hold it for too long. Anyway, this amp currently retails for $1,750 US. And it is a combination headphone amp, DAC, and preamp all in one. This is rated at 7.5 watts per channel, Class A. That's into 16 ohms, or it would be 5 watts per channel, Class A, into 32 ohms. This headphone amp has 4 digital inputs, and that would include coaxial optical, USB, and Bluetooth, and it has 3 analog inputs, which would be 2 sets of RCA jacks on the back and a 3.5mm microphone plug on the front. It has 4 analog outputs, which would include 2 6.3mm single-ended headphone outputs on the front and two sets of RCA outputs on the back. One is fixed, the volume is fixed, so it could be used as a standalone DAC, and the other is volume controlled, which means this unit can be used as a preamp. The DAC, which is built into this unit, uses dual ESS 908 or 9038 32-bit Sabre chips, and it handles PCM signals of up to 32 bits and 768 kilohertz, and DCM or DSD signals up to 512. The weight of this unit is just about 7 pounds. And the size is 10.5 inches wide by 12 inches deep and 2.7 inches tall. It is a pretty good size amp. It's one of the bigger that I've reviewed so far, and pretty heavy and pretty substantial feeling. The build quality, in my opinion, inside and out, is outstanding, and I'll talk about the inside of it in a couple minutes, why I was inside of this unit, but the entire thing is encased in finned aluminum, which acts as a big heat sink. This is a Class A amp, and Class A amps tend to put off a lot of heat. Well, I'll get into it now. The reason I was inside of this was the reviewer that had this amp before I did had a few problems with it, and he passed it on to me, and I did discuss this with Burson. I knew what I was getting. The problem was the power button to switch this amp on and off was kind of glitchy and not always working. Sometimes you had to push it 2 or 3 times to turn the unit on. And also in the menu, when it should have said RCA outputs, or RCA inputs, it actually said XLR, which would be the balanced version of this amp. So apparently there was a mix-up in this PCB board. So Burson did send me a replacement board, and obviously I had to open up the amp, and it took me a little while to figure it out, but I was able to replace the board fairly easy. There was no soldering or anything like that. It was just a few plugs that had to be plugged in and out, and I think about 6 or 8 screws that hold the board. So anyway, it turned into like a 30-minute job, and I replaced it. But inside the amp, I mean, the build quality just looks outstanding. all the circuit boards, everything are just super clean and organized, and you know, I mean, nothing looks out of place. Everything looks really nice inside, and like I said, the outside of this unit. This unit also, I want to mention that the has a selection of 8 different digital filters for the DAC, and it has 2 gain settings. And I did want to discuss that because according to the website and according to the manual, which you can upload off of the Burson website, they both say that it has 3 gain settings, but it turns out it only has 2, and that is one of my small complaints about this amp. I really do think that it should have 3 gain settings, because there's a huge difference between the low and high gain settings on this amp. To give you an example, I don't remember which headphone it was, but one of the headphones I was using when reviewing this, on low gain, I was at probably about upper 50s on the volume control, and it does have 100 steps. When I switched to high gain, I was probably in the single digits, like around 7 or 8, which, you know, I like having that low gain for, you know, real sensitive, efficient headphones, but it just seems like there should be something in between, because high gain is huge, and a lot of headphones you can't even use high gain, because, you know, by the time you get up to like 6 or 7 on the volume control, it's already too loud and each step is too much. So I would prefer that it had a 3rd gain setting. But anyway, it also has a switch which you can turn the display 90 degrees on this. It is an OLED display, and this unit can be, you can stand it up on its edge so it's upright, and you can switch the displays so the display is turned the same way that the amp is. And also it uses a 24 volt DC power supply, which is called an MPCS power supply, which according to Burson, that stands for max current power supply. And it is unique in the way that what it does, and I don't know all the details about it, but Burson claims that this design is quieter, gives you less background noise, and what it does is it uses transistors instead of transformers to convert the power from 120 volts AC into 24 volts DC. And I did get another upgrade power supply while I was reviewing this, and I will talk about that in the second part of this video, which will be after. I'm going to first give you a closer look at the unit here, and then I'm going to switch over to another video that gives a view of this plugged in and powered up, so I can show you how the menus work on this. But anyway, I wanted to give you a closer look at this. Starting over here, you have your power supply, or your power button to turn it on and off. You've got your 2 6.3 millimeter headphone outputs. You've got your microphone in, and then the buttons here, you start out, this first one is to set your inputs. The second one is to set your outputs. Then you've got your settings. Then this button here is the one that rotates your display 90 degrees if you want to stand the amp up on end like this, which saves a lot of space, and I've heard it actually cools better that way, but I never had a problem. It does get warm, but it doesn't get hot. And then you have your volume control here, and this little thing here, that's your sensor for the remote, and I'll try to remember to show you that in a minute here. On the back, you have your digital inputs. First, you've got your Bluetooth antenna, you've got your USB input here, you've got your optical input and your coaxial input, and then here's your plug for your 24 volt power supply. And then starting here, you've got your 2 sets of RCA analog inputs, which you can plug another DAC or whatever you want into this amp. And that was one of the problems that I did mention with the Burson Playmate, that it didn't have any analog inputs. I was a little disappointed. And this one, or no, I'm sorry, it did have, because no, it didn't. It was a Playmate that didn't have any analog inputs. It only had digital inputs. So I am happy to see the 2 sets of analog inputs on this. And then you've got 2 sets of analog outs, which one is a fixed volume to use this as a standalone DAC, and then the other is an adjustable volume to use this as a preamp. So, before I forget, this unit does come with a nice little remote. Nothing big, nothing fancy. And I did receive it not working, but I did put a lithium battery in it, and it works fine now. It adjusts your volume up and down. It can mute the amp, and you can change the inputs with this. But it is nice to have. I mean, if you're sitting back and have your feet up on the desk and want to change your volume or switch your inputs, it is nice to have a remote. So it's kind of a nice little extra. So anyway, I'm going to switch over now to a close-up of the amp and show you the screen and menus, and then after that I will be back with my opinions on the sound of this amp. So I will be back. Thanks. Hi, this is something that I didn't show you in my first impressions video. I wanted to show you a close-up of the amp and how all the controls work. First of all, you got your power button here, which turns the unit on and off. Then you've got your 2 headphone outputs, which are 6.3 millimeter single-ended. You've got your mic in. This button here is your input select. This is your output select. This is your settings. This is your display. Then you've got your volume control here. So starting with this button, this is your input button. And it shows you, now you have a choice of USB, optical input, coaxial input, Bluetooth input, or your 2 RCA single-ended inputs. Those are both analog inputs on the back of your amp. So to select through those, you go to your volume knob here and you push it in, and while pushing it in sets it. Turning it, you can go to whichever input you want. Once again, USB, optical, coax, whatever. So if I want to go to optical, I turn it there and then push that button, sets it to optical. Now to get out of that menu, you either wait about 30 seconds and it drops out on its own, or you push the button again. Now you can go to output. Now you've got a choice of your headphone output, your this would be your RCA outputs on the back, and this one here is your volume controlled, so you can use this as a preamp into another amp, or you can go to fixed output, which is basically how you would use this as a standalone DAC running into another headphone amp or whatever you want. So once again, you turn to your selection, you hit the button, and now we're back at headphone output. Now this one here is a little bit more complicated. This is your main menu, and you can scroll through. You've got your gain levels, you've got your digital filters, you've got DPILL or DPLL for DSD, and for PCM. And then if you continue down, you've got emphasis, which I believe is just for if you're using a tape player that I think filters out the hiss. Then you've got your display level and your reset. And I did want to give you a caution. The reset resets everything to its default settings, but that does include the high output on the gain setting, so you need to be careful. That caught me off guard, and I hit the reset and it went back to high gain, and I almost damaged a very expensive pair of headphones because this thing on high gain does put out a huge amount of power. So anyway, you can see it drops out after about 30 seconds. So anyway, you go through, you pick what you want. We'll go to filters here. You hit that. Well, okay, I didn't. Actually, what happened there is this knob is real sensitive, and just it's one problem I have had is you set it to where you want and then you push it to make the setting, but sometimes if you don't push it exactly in the center, you turn it and it goes to a different setting and then it messes you up. So anyway, now we're on the digital filters, and I think you've got about 8 or 9 different filter choices here. So we'll set it to one here. We'll try Big Brick Wall, push it, and now that's set. And then we're on low gain now, and then to get back out of there, you hit that. Then this is your display, which I think is pretty cool because this unit, you can stand it up on its edge, and when you do that, you hit the display button here and it turns turns the display on its side 90 degrees. So you're not trying to read it sideways. So I think that's a really great feature. One of the other amps I reviewed, I think it might have been the i-Fi, the IDSD. It automatically did that. Apparently it had a sensor inside of it. But anyway, you can switch the display whichever way you want. Also, in the menu, I didn't go to it, but there was a display adjustment where you can adjust the display to brighter or less bright. So anyway, I just wanted to show you all these controls, and there are 100 steps to the volume control, and that's both on high and low gain. So I'm going to get back to my video now, and we'll talk about the sound. Welcome back. This is the third part of my video. I did this a little bit different tonight, and so now I'm going to get into the sound. First of all, I wanted to let you know what equipment I used in reviewing this headphone amp. And to start with, my clean power was provided by Core Power Technologies, and my source was CDs from a Cambridge Audio 540C CD player used as a transport only. And the headphones that I used in reviewing this amp were the LSA Diamond, the LSA HP2, the ZMF Verite Openback, the Hi-Fi Man Sandara, the Hi-Fi Man HE560, and the Hi-Fi Man Aria, and that would be the version 3 with the stealth magnets, the new version that just came in a couple weeks ago for review. And also the Kennerton Odin and the Kennerton Woden. And then for comparisons, to compare the DAC, I used the iFi Audio IDSD Neo and the Topping D70S MQA version. The iFi Audio, that goes for I think $700, and the Topping goes for about $650, so I figured they were about the appropriate price range to compare to this DAC amp combo. And then as far as the power supplies powering this unit, I use both the stock power supply that comes with it, and Burson also sent me at a later time the Burson Supercharger 3A, which is an upgrade power supply. And I will talk about that in a little while. I did get a chance to compare the two. So now I guess we need to get into the sound of this amp, because that's what's most important. The first thing I notice about this amp, the very first thing I noticed when I turned it on, started listening to it, and I even mentioned this in my first impressions, is this amp just sounds powerful It sounds solid and it sounds dynamic. Everything has weight to it. This is not a thin, underpowered sounding amp by a long shot. This amp has an abundance of power. It doesn't matter what headphone you throw at it, it takes total control of every headphone. And the hardest two-drive headphone that I currently have would be the Hi-Fi-Man HE560. I wish I could get my hands on an Hi-Fi-Man H6, but just haven't been able to do that yet, which is pretty much known as probably the hardest headphone to drive ever made. But anyway, the HE560 is a pretty good test of power of an amp, and this amp just comes through with, never lacks any power at all. I mean, it has all the power you're ever going to need. The sound itself, I would describe as slightly on the warm side of neutral, mostly in the mids. I notice in the mids, the voices just sound a little bit warm, and that's probably the Class A type of amp that this is. It's just, you know, giving everything a little bit of warmth. But it doesn't give up any detail at all to achieve that warmth. The clarity and resolution are both very, very good. The extension at both ends is very good. There is no roll off at all in the treble. There's no roll off in the bass. The bass is deep. It's solid and it's well controlled. The bass always has weight to it. The detail is, like I said, very, very good, but it doesn't sound analytical. This is not a thin or dry sounding amp at all. It is, it's smooth, it's liquid, and it has good musicality to it. Getting into the DAC, this combination DAC and headphone amp has a very good DAC in it. I do not feel that this DAC is lacking at all. I compared it directly to two other DACs that I mentioned a minute ago. Both are in the $650, $700 range. They're both known to be very good DACs. And I think this DAC built into this unit holds its own very well with both of them. The way I compared it is this DAC, or this headphone amp, has two sets of RCA analog inputs. And so I ran these other two DACs into this one at a time and compared back and forth. And it was real easy to do because I could just go into the, have one playing, go into the menu, dial in the other input, the RCA input instead of the digital input, and the one that was playing would continue playing until I pushed the button. That would be, you know, the volume button. You push it to set, so it just instantly switch over. There was no gap at all, just an instant switch over from one DAC to the other. And I was able to compare them, and first of all, the iFi IDSD Neo, I would say the iFi sounded just slightly, they were close, but there are differences. There's differences between these three DACs. The iFi, I would say, sounded slightly more airy, slightly more open, and slightly more three-dimensional, and just a little bit more holographic than the amp built into the Burson. But the Burson, to me, sounded a little warmer. It had more weight to the sound. It had more weight to the bass. And it sounded a little bit more dynamic and a little more punchy than the iFi. Comparing it to the D70S by Topping, when I switched back and forth, what I noticed was with the Burson and the tone balance and the the sound were very similar between the topping and the Burson. What I noticed the difference was the sound stage. It was a pretty big difference. With the Burson, especially vocals, the Burson, the vocals were more centered and a little bit more out front. Where when I switched over to the topping, the vocals came in a little closer, but they also wrapped around the side a little bit more. And I did notice, even with music, a little bit more width in the sound stage with the topping compared to the Burson. So I think the Burson had a little more width to the sound stage, but the Burson had a little more depth to it, where the vocals sounded a little bit further out in front of me. So, like I said, not a huge difference between any of these three decks, but a noticeable difference. And I can't really say that I preferred one over the other. You know, it was pretty close with all three of them. I think all three of them are in the same ballpark as far as, you know, the quality. What I want to talk about for a few minutes here is I have seen several, not necessarily reviews, but kind of mini reviews by people who have bought or used Burson amps. And I've heard several mentions of background noise being a problem. And I have reviewed 3 Burson amps now. I reviewed the Fun a couple of years ago, the Playmate 2 like 6 months ago, and now the Conductor. And I've never had any issues with any background noise. There is a slight hiss to the background with real sensitive headphones, and I'll talk about that in a few seconds. But I saw a post not too long ago, and I'm almost sure that it was the Conductor or one of the more expensive Burson amps. And they were talking about using it with, I think it was a ZMF Verite headphone. And they said that there was too much background noise to use it with that headphone. And I did use the ZMF Verite, and that's a 300 ohm headphone, and it takes quite a bit of power to drive that headphone. It's definitely more power hungry than some of the other headphones I used, including the Kennerton Odin, Woden, LSA Diamond, especially the LSA HP2. It's much harder to drive than any of those, and I didn't hear any hiss at all with any of those. So I'm assuming that there was either a defect with that amp, a defect in the power supply, or maybe that person doesn't have clean power coming into their house. But I have not had any issues with background noise that I can hear with anything other than IEMs or very sensitive headphones with any of the 3 Burson amps. In fact, this amp, I tried the Grotto SR80E, which is a very easy to drive headphone, and the Philips SHP 9500, and I can't pick up any background noise at all with either of those headphones. Okay, I did try out these. And these are the headphones that I use to pick up background noise in amps. It's a Sony Mdrv700. I've had these for like 20 years. They're DJ headphones. They don't sound all that great. I mean, I thought they did at the time. I thought they were the best thing I ever heard. But anyway, these are extremely sensitive. They're like 112 decibels at 1 milliwatt. These are more sensitive than some IEMs. Okay, so I tried these, and yes, I do pick up a background hiss. And I also tried some IEMs like the Hi-Fi Man RE400 and the Venture Electronics, oh, I forgot the name of it. It's a great little set of IEMs, and I tried some earbuds even. And yeah, I can pick up a slight hiss, but it doesn't seem to be connected to the amp at all, because it doesn't matter if I'm on low gain or high gain, the slight hiss stays the same. And it doesn't matter where the volume control is, anywhere from 0 to 100. It does not change. It's just a slight hiss. It basically sounds like a distant light rain is what it sounds like. Okay, well, I went into the menu and I went through everything. I went through the inputs, I went through the outputs, I went through the filter settings, I went through everything I could find on the menu to see if going through those, and I did it listening to these Sony headphones to see if anything changed that hiss. Excuse me a second. Okay, I did find one thing. That is the display setting, the OLED display setting. If it's on low, the hiss is very quiet. If I kick that up to bright on the display, the hiss gets louder. So but I can't imagine that that's being picked up by anything other than IEMs or anything real sensitive. Like I said, I mean, even headphones like the Grotto SR80E, it's dead silent, you know, and the way I test it is I put my CD player on pause and turn the volume up. And like I said, it makes no difference where the volume's at or if it's on high or low gain. Like I said, I believe that hiss is coming from the display. So that's one more suggestion to Burson maybe, is make it so you can turn that display off completely. That might get rid of the hiss. Okay, I also wanted to discuss the Burson supercharger. Burson sent that to me and asked me to throw that into this review. And I don't know exactly how it works, but according to the box, it says that basically it kicks the background noise up to a higher frequency out of the range of human hearing. Okay, other than that hiss, which I believe is coming from the display panel, I do not hear any background noise at all in this amp. So, to be honest, switching over to the upgrade power supply, I didn't hear a difference. But I didn't hear any noise before I used it, like I said, other than the slight hiss that I pick up with very sensitive headphones. And, you know, I think it's coming from the display. Other than that, I don't hear any background noise in this amp, even if I turn the volume all the way up to 100, so that didn't make a difference to me. Okay, it mentions moving the background noise up to higher frequencies out of the range of human hearing. Okay, I'm 57 years old and I know I don't hear anything above 15,000 hertz. So is it possible that there is background noise somewhere between 15,000 and 20,000 hertz that I'm not hearing that someone else might hear, and that this different upgrade power supply might remove? That is very possible. I don't know. So I'm not saying it's not doing anything. All I'm saying is that I don't hear the difference, but I have very clean power coming into my house. I'm on my own transformer, just my house alone, and I have a dedicated 20 amp circuit going to my headphone equipment, and I'm not picking up you know, any noise, even if I don't use my Core Power power conditioner. I tried it 3 different ways with the Core Power. I tried it with the Hi-Fi power station, and I tried it with nothing, just plugged directly into the wall, and I don't hear any background noise in this amp either way with either power supply other than that slight hiss, which I believe is coming from the display. So this Burson upgrade power supply, like I said, I'm not hearing a difference, but I don't hear above 15,000 hertz. And I have clean power. So if someone has dirtier power coming into their amp, I'm not saying it won't make a difference. Or if they are more sensitive to sounds above 15,000 hertz, which I'm not hearing, it might make a difference to them. So I don't know, but to me it didn't really make a difference. I did, before I wrap this up, I did want to touch on a few issues I do have with this amp. I consider all 3 of them minor. One is when using the volume control to go through the menus, it's a bit touchy. It's real easy to jump past where you're trying to get, or you just barely touch it. It jumps forward, it jumps back. Very, very touchy and a little bit hard to dial in the settings you want. Like, you know, if you go into the menu, you're trying to go to the different digital filters or whatever. It's a little touchy, and I had a little bit of problems with it. And I did mention in the earlier part of this video that I did switch out the PCB board. And I did, I've actually got the old one right here. This is what I took out and replaced. And this here, it does replace the on-off switch. That button is right there. It replaces the input, the output, the settings, and the display buttons, and it also replaces the volume control, and that pushes in and out, and that's how you set your menus. So anyway, all that's been replaced, and it did fix the problem with the power button as far as having to push it 2 or 3 times to get the unit on sometimes. And it did fix the issue with the display showing XLR instead of RCA. But the volume control, as far as adjusting, going through the menu and stuff, is still very touchy. That didn't seem to change. So that's one small issue I have. The other is that both the website and the instructions that I had to get off of the website, because I wasn't sent any instructions with this, they both say that this unit has 3 gain settings. Mine only has 2. I was told that that's correct. It's only supposed to have 2. That it was a mistake in the website. I would really like to see this amp have 3 gain settings. I think that they're too far apart. The most powerful, the high, you have to only, you know, you got to be using hard to drive, you know, planar magnetic. Even some planar magnetic headphones is too high. You don't have enough control. So only the hardest to drive headphones you're ever going to use the high gain setting on this. And the low setting is a little bit low for, you know, some of the harder to drive headphones, and you're kind of debating, you know, I might be like on 60 on low gain and then only be on like 7 or 8 on high gain. And I think there should be a 3rd gain setting in the middle somewhere where, you know, I might be on 30 or 40 or something. So I'd like to see that. And then I do have one issue, and I mentioned this in the not the first part of this video, but my first impressions video, that the reset button, which sets everything back to the default factory settings on this, resets the gain control to high, and I don't like that. I think it should reset it to low, and you should have to deliberately put it on high, because an amp with this much power, if you don't realize it's on high, and even if you reset it, the memory stays, or the volume stays at the same place. So if you've got your volume set at 50 and you had it on low gain and you hit the reset button, now it's on high gain, but the volume still says 50. So either, my advice to Burson is either make the reset button reset the volume to 0 along, or make the reset button reset the gain control to low, because I came very close to damaging a very expensive set of headphones by hitting the reset button and not knowing that it was going to go to high gain. I had the volume at 50 and my ears were ringing for 3 or 4 days, and my headphones actually sounded or smelled hot after just a few seconds at that volume level. So I recommend Burson either make low gain the default setting, or make it so when you hit reset that the volume goes back to 0. So other than that, those 3 minor issues, the gain control, the reset, and a little bit touchy trying to go through the menu. Other than that, I love this amp. Okay. I did compare this directly to the Audio GD Master 9 and Audio GD R8 combination. And I realized that that combination costs about twice as much as this amp does. Each of those units cost about the same as this, so we're looking at double the price. Okay, no, I did not think that the Burson Conductor 3 reference, I don't think it quite matched up to the Audio GD Master 9 R8 combination. I think it was about 90% of the way there. Would I trade this for the Audio GD combination? No. But it does get you, in my opinion, about 90% of the way there for half the price. So, so do I recommend this? Yeah, I highly recommend this amp. It's versatile. It has every input, both digital and analog, you would need. You can use it with just about any headphone other than the most sensitive IEMs. You're going to pick up a little bit of hiss. And like I said, I think that's coming from the display. So if Burson made a way to switch the display off, it might get rid of that completely, and you could use this amp with the most sensitive IEMs. So yeah, it's versatile. It's got a great DAC in it. It's a very clean, very powerful amp that you can, it's got enough power for any headphone, and yes, I can highly recommend it. So no, it's $17.50. It's not budget, it's not low price, but I believe it's a very good quality DAC and amp at a fair price. So yes, I recommend it. Yes, I'm going to wrap this video up now. It's gotten way too long. And once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience. This video has helped you. Please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And please join us over at the Headphone Experience on Facebook. We are up to 13.6 thousand members over there. Once again, thanks for watching my video.